as we speak.
Oh, okay. Little indicator up there.
It's been an interesting day. I don't think I've watched so much television on one day from morning till moments ago,
Yeah.
and it's all good news.
Yeah, yeah.
I
was
feel my
thinking,
shoulders going down. The pain in my neck has gone away.
That's funny.
There's so
I think
many
the
things.
last
I
time
think
I watched it.
all the chiropractors and people who've been treating people for medical things for years are going to be out of work now.
That may be true. Or maybe a whole new clientele they have. It's hard to say.
Now all we have to do is get rid of COVID.
Isn't that the truth?
Boy,
Oh. I'm glad you said it. I'll do it. I can do it. So what?
Like 66.
Okay.
68.
68? For the 68. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'll shut the door.
so Ron, I'll do a quick intro if you can have it go to me, and I'll send it. You want it to go to you?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
And then I'll
okay,
then
great.
I'll share the
Okay.
presentation screen. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I see the one announcement said 7 o'clock, so I suspect that there's a.
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
7
okay.
o'clock. Yeah, 6:45 is just a meet and greet kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have about 14 minutes to sit and
Yeah.
wait a bit.
Chat. Oh, that's good. We used to back in the day when you could have meetings with all the people actually there. Here in Atlanta, we always whoever was sponsoring the meeting always provided like a barbecue meal, and that was one way we get a lot of people.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
Yeah.
We'd be sipping Paul's famous New England clam chowder right about now.
Ooh, does that sound good?
Something not to be missed.
We did have some great times, and
had me a clam chowder.
And you find that if you feed them, they will come.
Yeah, it was. We did
I like
two
that.
things that we would have meals, but we also often held the meetings at Turner, which had an immense membership right all in itself. So we were like built in. People would just come over. So how big of an area does your section cover?
Well,
We
we
have-
cover pretty much
Go ahead,
everything except Connecticut. Really, Connecticut is
New
actually
York?
Connecticut has a subsection of New York.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Brian Kolars is down there,
Okay.
and yeah, so pretty much it's the other 5 remaining states.
Well, Connecticut has ESPN too, though, doesn't it?
They do.
Yeah. Okay. So that would
Bristol.
Yeah. So you pretty much your membership pretty much centered in Boston, or is that usually?
I would say it is Eastern Massachusetts centric, but
okay.
But there are some scattered around all around Maine and through the other states as well. But most of our meetings have always been in Eastern Massachusetts.
Well, the one good thing about doing this is it's probably gotten people to attend via Zoom that may not have been able to attend so much before.
Right, we've had people as far away as California on occasion.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. So we, but it varies by topic too, and what people are interested in. And I would imagine tonight would be TV station personnel, management, and that sort of thing. I don't know. We'll see. Right now we're low, but maybe by 7 we'll pick up some more. But you never know. We let headquarters know too. If we'd like to get as much publicity as we can.
That's good. Well, I imagine a lot of the television people had a pretty busy day today.
In a Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Not as busy as they were afraid it might be, but probably pretty busy.
I'm a big fan of these Zoom meetings. They replaced our in-house meetings in the sense that people used to come to our meetings to socialize.
Yeah.
But now they can do that during this time, this half hour before
Yeah,
the
yeah.
meeting officially starts.
Yeah.
And the fact that these recordings are stored on our webpage
Yeah.
means people can look them up. And the nice thing is I can see the viewership from YouTube.
Yeah.
And I do notice that people, when they come and see a meeting, they then sort of have a look at some of the other ones. So
Okay.
I am very much in favor of this archive of very interesting meetings that have been gradually starting to accumulate.
Yeah. Do you get any sense from those metrics of where the people are that are viewing them afterwards on YouTube, or you just get numbers?
I haven't looked that carefully.
Okay.
In the past, I've done this with other people, like the Boston Ballet.
Yeah.
And they get a viewership that ranges over the world.
Oh, okay.
People who just happen on one of their instructional videos and then sort of see some of the others.
Oh, okay.
So I think the real value is going to accrue to us over the long term.
Yeah.
I really like.
I imagine. I mean, I know that from that most SMPTE sections get some pretty interesting presentations from, a variety of people, and that this really would become a great repository for people all over to kind of see things that they may not have an opportunity to get those presentations otherwise.
Yeah. And we always get questions from people who say like, "Oh, I missed the meeting last March. What was it like?"
Yeah.
And it was difficult to get people to write them up because we used to write up little summaries.
Yeah.
And now these Zoom meetings are just an absolutely fabulous opportunity.
Yeah.
And I
So
really
something
think
good has come out of all of this, is what
Yes.
All right.
But
Glad
not
to hear it.
We have
much,
also
but that's one of them.
And we have also increased our reach, where before it was limited a little bit by how far people had to drive.
Yeah.
Now really people can very conveniently watch these presentations at home and socialize with their long-term professional friends and stuff like that. This is really great.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, if things ever get back to normal, we'll undoubtedly continue this somehow.
Yeah.
This at least streamed.
Yeah. Because we had, and I suspect you had too, but here we had started doing an online version, even though we would be meeting in person. We'd also have an online at the same time, and there'd be a number of people from the Atlanta chapter covers parts of Alabama and North and South Carolina, and so then people that would never be able or seldom be able to get to a meeting, that they would come in online and they could see the presentation, they could ask questions, but there wasn't the nice kind of able to see people, and they were kind of just disembodied, and all the questions were via text or a little message.
And the questions are very important because that's what people bring it back to sense, to logic.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very, very good way.
Yeah. Excellent. Are you having winter? Is it having winter up there?
Very mild.
Yeah. So far, that's
Mild
good.
winter. So
Yeah.
far, yeah, very 5 to 10 degrees above normal, I'd say, for the most part.
I grew up outside of Buffalo.
Oh,
Yeah. So they're although we're all quite excited these days for the football team, but I know that in my hometown they're looking at like 17 or 18 inches of snow.
wow. For the
Sorry.
game? Oh,
No, not now. That the next game will be in Kansas City, so they won't.
oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're done playing at home, but just you quickly get used to not having much snow when you move away from it. Took me about 1 month. It took me about a January to go, yeah, I like this better.
Yeah, I know. You've had snow in Buffalo. It's like over your head.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've from there, and I lived in Syracuse and Oswego, which are another two
Yeah.
heavy snowfall places.
Yeah, I had a friend that worked at WNYS in
Yeah.
Syracuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to visit him up there. Yeah, it's cold winter. Very cold winter up there.
I used to work for VCI, which was located in Springfield,
Oh, mhm.
and I've gotten trapped in that Hartford airport more than once.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost one metropolitan area.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. We got another 4 minutes.
Did you used to have a guy named Ray Blumenthal who worked for you guys?
Not in the time I've been here, about 8 years, and not in my time, but it could well be. I mean, we've had a lot of people through here. This was at one point it was he was like 50 or 60 people.
Last time I spoke to Ray, he was with Adorama in industrial sales and broadcast sales. But that was still maybe 4 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
He was a big mover and shaker with the New York chapter. This is how I knew him.
Oh, okay. What do you guys do currently?
Well, I've been in broadcast sales for 40 years.
Okay.
Currently with a small company called Unique Scientific in New Hampshire.
Hence your email address, huh?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So we do design and build.
Okay.
Mostly in the cable industry and schools, things like that, towns.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm retired. I was with Emerson College for 35 years, retired. I'm now in a cable access group and a museum. So it keeps me out of the bars.
Yes. All right. So were you an engineer at Emerson or an instructor or both?
I was administration. The faculty were all unionized, but the administration would have the technical staff.
Okay.
Essentially, I was director of engineering, but also manager of operations.
Yeah,
so I had two titles for a while, and then the college went through a number of changes, and a new vice president came in, and I was no longer director of engineering, but I still had a job.
Yeah.
Things shift around.
Yep.
But I had my good time there.
Well, that's one of the earliest television programs in the country.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They started in 52, I think 53 maybe.
Yeah. One of my professors at Syracuse had been a Emerson graduate.
Hello, Jonathan.
Hello there.
How you doing? Thanks for being
Very well.
Yeah, Emerson has a very good program.
Yeah.
I've gone out to California and met battalions of them there, and they're all in pretty good shape.
It's actually a mafia. They call them the Emerson
The
Mafia.
Emerson Mafia. Okay.
And they bought the parking lot that's adjacent to KTLA. And actually, I think it was given to them by some people out there. But they built a college presence. They have a center. They do a lot of internship situations there.
Yeah.
But they're right there in the heart of
Well, that's right on Sunset Boulevard.
yeah, right in Hollywood there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good central place to be, that's for sure.
I used to work for a vendor, and then for a couple of manufacturers, generally small but Boston-based. And
Okay.
the latest one, a company called Broadcast Fix. And then I went to work for the public access people.
Okay.
So I had to learn how to make that equipment that
Yeah,
we
just
made work.
do something. See, I wasn't lying. It does do what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Well, Marty,
Well-
my clock says it's about 6:07.
Yep,
Maybe a little later, but
yeah, I'm showing 7 straight up, so.
okay, we'll wait.
But yeah.
Greg
maybe
Brewer
we'll
has popped on. Hello, Greg.
get
Good to see you.
Another minute. Shadi, are you taking part in the presentation or?
Shaddy will be
Yes.
correcting me when I say wrong things.
Oh, okay, okay.
So,
So,
like
so
my
I will never
monitor.
be saying anything.
Yeah.
If you do that as a hobby or as a
It's his
life
job
work,
description.
I'd like to hire you because I say a lot of wrong things all the time.
It's right there in his job description.
Hopefully it's not the blind leading the blind scenario.
Well, I suppose we can go,
Okay.
even if others join us later. So, well, good evening. Welcome to our January meeting of SMPTE's New England section. I'm Marty Feldman, the section chair. Also on with us from our section is Paul Beck, our treasurer, secretary, chief cook and bottle washer, and Bob Lamb, who's our webmaster and a manager. And glad to have, we couldn't run this without them. They are indispensable. And if this had been one of our regular meetings in person, we would be having some of Paul Beck's famous New England clam chowder, I should say.
Chowder.
But we're looking forward to getting back to that. But even when we do, we'll keep streaming. We're getting people from all over the place in some meetings, California and New York and all over the place. So, well, tonight we are very fortunate to have with us Ron Caird and Shadi Diab from FLORICAL Systems. Now, they've been around about 35 years making station automation systems. Everything from central casting to now the cloud. And I'm looking forward to learning more about the cloud because I've seen other things in the cloud, but not master control operations. So that should be rather interesting. About 1 million years ago, I worked in a master control. That's been so long that that was back in the days of film chains and 1-inch tape and all sorts of good stuff. So we have not come up with a February meeting yet, but watch your email and you'll be getting something on the February meeting, maybe late in February. One thing I will mention that we just worked out is you probably all know Mark Shubin from the Metropolitan Opera. And on April 21st, he's going to give a presentation at our April meeting on television at the opera, where it started, what they're doing now. They do broadcasting all over the world to movie theaters. They've been doing that for a while, but he'll go over that as well. And he's got a very nice presentation for us. So that's one thing you can put on your calendars. Everything else right now is up in the air, but we're working on it. So Ron has been the national sales manager for FLORICAL Systems for how long now, Ron?
About 8 years.
Yeah, and FLORICAL's been around for about 35 years?
Yeah, since 1986.
Right. Well, it's my pleasure to turn the meeting over now to Ron, and we're looking forward to learning more about automation systems. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here with this presentation and see if I can do this. Uh-oh. Is that up? Can anybody see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Looks good.
let me go to a slideshow approach to it then so that we can see it even bigger. All right. So just as we start, kind of some introduction, and Marty already did a good part of the introduction of us, of FLORICAL. But as he said, because it's been 35 years, we've kind of been through the first analog to digital transition, which was in the content from analog tape to digital tape, and then into servers. And then the second one, which was from NTSC to ATSC, and also in SD to HD. So it kind of been through all that. And now, and more recently, and it still a while, I think we did our first centralized approach to master control for multiple stations in the late 80s, when we worked to do that for NBC Network, where they built a couple of hubs for all their stations. And we've done a bunch of that since. Really the three different approaches to centralization. One is that everything is streamed out of the central location and then just goes to transmitters. The second is that control is centralized, but the actual playout is located at the edges. And then there's hybrid versions of that, where some is controlled and some is actually central broadcast. And we've been involved in all three of those, and still currently are. We have automation in stations from market number 1 to market number 200. So we have a kind of a broad understanding of what the similarities are between broadcasters in that whole variety of markets, and what the differences are. With me is Shadi Diab, who is our project manager and is also involved in marketing projects as well. Shadi's has a background in television automation as well as in IT, and he's got a remarkably broad background that he brings to bear. And he's will be quite a resource for us tonight, I expect. It's kind of a starter. I'd really like to do this as a conversation more than as a presentation. Some things, some concepts and things we'll talk about. If we just go through the slides, we'll be done by 7:22. So how it goes will depend on what kind of questions you have and what kind of in-depth kind of presentation or discussion we want to get into. So that kind of a thing, feel free to just stop and ask questions or raise points wherever you feel like it. One of the things I think we've all seen that we've been in television broadcasting for a while is that virtually as many different stations as there are, so there's that many different ways of going about doing this business. And it's been I think because it started as such a mom and pop or a small, people owned a station or maybe two. And so everybody kind of developed as they went. And then over the last 10 years or 15 years, it's gotten more grouped. Some of those things becomes less diverse, but there's still individuality almost in every single one of these stations. So I think that people have different ways of seeing things and ways of going about them. And it's important to try to understand what works for somebody or how they want to work and help facilitate that rather than fight them or force them into doing things another way. As we know, and a lot of talk has been lately about cloud, about the transition to the cloud, and it's a trending topic, as they say. And it was that the business was moving that way anyway at some pace. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated that in many ways. Like we're doing now, we've discovered that as unnatural as Zoom meetings seemed at first, There's some things that they've opened up opportunities for, which is increasing your reach so people can be involved and can participate from long distance where that was much less of a thing before. And I think the other place that it's in our business, it's certainly accelerated the motion toward the movement, the evolution toward using cloud-based infrastructures to run our businesses. Predominantly, it's initially and probably still the main place it's used is in production and sharing production resources and content as people continue to make and finish content. In the playout realm, at this point, it seems to be VOD is a perfect example of something where the cloud storage and playout is certainly useful and ready to go and being used now. And I think we're starting to see broadcasters or cable networks move into it with some of the unique characteristics of some of the cable networks and some of the diginets, the secondary channels, where the schedule is well in advance. It's not a real dynamic schedule, so you can put your content in storage in the cloud and play it out, knowing that you're going to have your content scheduled and in place in plenty of time to play out. I think that when we look at it, the dynamic kind of live broadcasting situations, it's a different kind of story. I mean, you think of all the things that a live broadcaster, even if you're running network programming, the things that you need to be aware of and take into consideration that are important. I mean, we see the ability to do join in progress for breaking news or for things like sports events that you don't know when they're going to end. Running breaks that are planned, but if it's a live event like a sporting event or even a news show or some of the talk shows, they don't always hit exactly when they're supposed to. So you have to have some ability to manually trigger when events take place. There's in television, live television broadcasting, there's lots of secondary events that take place in the schedule. It's not just roll a break, but it's bring this bug up, take this bug down, run a crawl across the bottom for school closings or emergency alert, that sort of thing. There's lots of moving parts that have to take place, and we've grown accustomed over the years to having that look pretty flawless, or at least to the point where if something goes wrong, we notice it. You know, that one frame of black that shows up between spots, or the one frame of another spot that comes up and then goes away and you go to the spot that you want. Those things get noticed now because we're so used to it being exactly when it's supposed to be. The time determination is so important, and the viewers have gotten so accustomed to it that it sticks out when it isn't working the way it's supposed to. And those are the sort of things that become the infrastructure within the current public cloud situation is not really fully in place to enable that in a way that television broadcasters are used to having. So there's some pieces that still remain to be finalized. It's going to completely enable a live broadcaster to move into cloud master control or cloud playout, but there's steps that can be taken in between. It's a kind of a migration path that we think will enable people to move forward with what they can do now, but be prepared as the technology gets finalized and comes into place to do it, to move more entirely into the cloud. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about here tonight, is where we are now, what that looks like, and what are some of the steps that can be made to move from where we are now to the cloud, to totally in the cloud. I think I lost my point here. Okay, we'll move. So this is kind of where we are now, and everybody can lean in because if we were in a big room on a big screen, none of this would make any sense because you wouldn't be able to see it. But here it is right in front of you, so you can look a little closer. This is what I'd say is predominantly what the current situation is. We're in a hybrid SDI IP infrastructure with a lot of components that are contained and separate, but they're all doing their job, and in a way that's determinate that allows all these things we just talked about, the timing of switches from spots to the next spot to program to live to join in progress, and all graphics coming on and off to all take place when it needs to. So really right now in most television plants, the core is still an SDI router, and content in a baseband SDI sense passes through that router to be, as it gets ingested, as it gets played out, as it goes to the ATSC encoder. And then the IP infrastructure around that allows for IP-based movement of content and also of control. So if we look, let's see, down in this section here would really be where the automation components would be the all the database information, the management of the file-based content and of ingest and moving content to where it needs to be in order to be played out. And then the control of the devices, whether they be servers or CGs or switchers or the router itself, whatever. And that's usually a combination of serial control and IP control. So that's another kind of hybrid situation. I think as you guys know, that one of the things about this business is that the hardware tends to last a lot longer than you think it should. At least it seems to stay in place for a long time. So you've got things that are controlled via older protocols or older methods such as 422, and you've got stuff that can be controlled via IP. And they exist in kind of a mixture. It's got interfaces to traffic, so you can not only get logs but send back as run reports. On the right hand side here we have content that comes in file based from edge servers, be it the spot services or the content services. And now actually a lot of that is in the process of moving to the cloud. So that's not coming into an edge server in a plant, but it's being called for from a cloud-based storage. But that's stuff that doesn't need to be real time. It can come as files over time and be, as long as it's there in time to be played out. It doesn't have that timeliness factor that your actual playout does. So I think you look at this as a premise-based approach. It's all there, whether that premise is the centralized hub or the local station. The equipment is there. And it's accessible and it can be tweaked, as it were, or manipulated as it needs to be, because it's all right there. The computer resources are purpose-built in the sense that they are that's where you access it. The user interfaces. The users access this through interfaces, through as a workstation or maybe a web-based kind of approach. But it's all accessible and under the control of that station. I think some of the pros to this approach is, number one, it's familiar. We know how to run it. We know how to work it. We've been doing it for a long time. I mean, the station does. Everybody that's there knows how to do what they do. You have much greater. You have a feeling of much greater control because you're directly accessing stuff, equipment, and other resources that are expressly there for that purpose. And you essentially you have the ability to modify what you're putting out quickly, to change content, to make different choices on spots or program or excuse me, other sorts of decisions that can be made very close to airtime. That this allows that to happen, and it's become a comfortable way for people to work. I mean, I think we look at particularly those live events that may have been scheduled or may not have been scheduled, the breaking news. I mean, we certainly saw last week or 2 weeks ago on January 6th with that required for both networks and local stations to be able to quickly react to what was going on and on the fly figure out how that was going to impact their stations programming and schedule and everything else. And so the ability to do that quickly and on the spot and on time is one of the key strengths of where this sort of an approach is, particularly at this point in time. Some of the cons, it's a CapEx expense, and it's a big CapEx expense, which is one of the reasons why things tend to stay in place for a long time, because it's very expensive to replace them. It takes to expand or contract doesn't happen quickly. If you want to add a channel, oftentimes there's a lot you have to go through in order to do that. So you can say, I want to add even something like I want to add this secondary network. I want to add Me TV or this TV to one of my sub channels. Well, even once I've negotiated that contract, I still have to get things in place for it to happen, and that's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen maybe in 3 weeks, maybe in a month, maybe a little faster. But there's things that make those kind of changes take a little longer, and all the hardware and the software that's there has to be refreshed at one point or another. It's another recurring expense that you have to plan for in a CapEx budget, which is oftentimes the hardest budgets to get in place and to hold on to once they get in place. Any comments or any thoughts on this? Anything you want to add, Shaddy, or any questions that anybody has? This pretty much look familiar. Yeah, okay, good. All right, let's go. So here's in the phase one of the transition, looks pretty much the same as what we were just looking at, with the difference that that over here in this section over here, all or many of the automation type functions have been virtualized. Rather than having their own computer that runs some or one of the functions that are involved in that automation system, they've been virtualized so they can be hosted on a single data center computer, and that's really been the first stage that we've come to, is that plants will have they've put in a blade server that they want to be able to just not have to buy other servers. They just want to mount software on a centralized computer or computer system. And so that's the first step, is being able to centralize or to virtualize that so it can be run anywhere in the computing resources that the whole facility shares. This allows for somewhat faster expansion, lower upgrade costs. But I think the key is, you'll notice that up here, all the actual video functionality and playout functionality remains pretty much the same as it was in the first. The main reason for that is those are the functions that need to have exact timing. They need to have frame accurate timing, And everything that happens in a sequence has to happen in the right sequence at the right time. And right now, the standards, the infrastructure within the cloud really does not allow for that to happen on a consistent basis. That even in computers, there's no equivalent to time code that has that kind of exact timing with it. I mean, that's the challenge right now, and for us, that's where we stand right now, is that we have virtualized all these non-time determinant functions, but we're still in the process of virtualizing the actual playout functionality. We have a standalone product that's a channel in a box, is the kind of the way it's been referred to, that includes switching, includes encoding and decoding, includes graphics, includes some other layers of things. It includes DVE. It's storage, content storage. That's all on a single computer. But because it all still requires that exact timing, we haven't gotten to the point where that's virtualizable yet. Particularly in a situation where you have these multiple events happening quickly and sometimes having to be changed quickly. But that's the first. So the first step is that. I should also point out that the traffic would system would probably reside on the same virtual machine host, not separately like it shows down here. And at this point, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. What about IEEE 1588 as a time source, as in a lot of the IP systems?
Shannon, you got an answer for that?
I think there's something to consider, and I think it's going to be a big factor going forward when we go into the cloud, instead of the hardware card that we use right now for time boards.
We've attempted to do some stuff with PTP. It just hasn't been precise enough to work the way we need it to work. And this was the place we did this was, which was predominantly an audio facility, a radio facility, where it was fine for what they were doing with audio only, but it wasn't precise enough when you needed to add video to that.
What about GPS based timing?
I think I think. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead, Ron.
No, I mean,
I'll just have an afterthought after this.
Well, okay. I think that's a potential, but I still there's a precision to it that we're so used to with time code. With 29.94 frames per second, it just hasn't really proven to be accurate enough for the. I mean, if you look at the signal chain of all the things that have to happen, and they have to happen in exactly the right time in a sequence, that there's so many places where there's room for things to get out of sync that we haven't been able to put it that closely into place yet. I think if you look at the people that have moved their playout to the cloud, it is stuff that is produced and made that so that all that kind of content is the overlays and all that stuff are in there already. And then for the spot insertion, that often happens at the edge. So there's a trigger in the signal or along with the signal that says, okay, here, put your spots in now, and then come back when we're ready. And there's also SCTE kind of standards for signaling that with 104 and 35. So that's the stuff that has lent itself to the first kind of total move to the cloud. But if we look at what a normal, well, not a normal, but what a live linear broadcaster does, there's so many variables that continue to make it difficult until they get resolved.
I'm thinking back to going way back to the old days where a local station would gen lock to the network.
Yep.
For accurate time. You probably remember that.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, you know, where you're going to so much that's outside of the facility, especially the cloud, that you would really need an accurate time reference for every location to be locked. And that has been kind of worked out for the IP,
Yeah.
like ST2110.
Right. But yes, and 2110 I mean, it's certainly the standard that everybody's working towards, but there's still those little, it still isn't, there's like, I don't know, 17 defined sections, like 2110, 1, 2 through whatever. And some of the ones that have been the most difficult to resolve, but they're working on them, are those ones that will allow for all that timing to take place. And I think when we get 2 more slides down and we start talking about microservices that particularly in the cloud, they can reside anywhere. That's the benefit of microservices is the computing resources can be very much dispersed, but that really kind of exacerbates the problems with the timings when you've got the services separate by a lot that all have to stay in time. So that's kind of like the next level of issues that have to be resolved. Shay, did you have something to add, Shay?
No, I was going to mention, just to go back a little bit about the cloud. You got to think that cloud, has many forms. We use it very generally, but in this case, we're referring to virtual machines. But you could be talking about more of a traditional public cloud where you're dealing with containers compared to full OSs that's running on this. So there's a level of complexity that comes with all of that, depending on your migration path and what you choose to do. So that's going to also factor in. And Ron mentioned that with the microservices, when those come into play with the timing.
Good. So then the next phase of the transition is to continue and complete the virtualization of those playout functionalities. And at that point, you're pretty much entirely an IP workflow. Anything that's coming in from outside the facility, the first thing that happens is it gets turned into video over IP and then goes into the system. So that's kind of just the expansion of what we just talked about. And this I think tends to be, this is still a premise-based approach, just because the virtualization is one thing, and it can work in the cloud, but it would mean the way that you would have to use and pay for computing resources in the cloud they're more attuned to microservices rather than virtualized machines that would exist within there. So there's some reasons that this is the plus it's easier to virtualize than it is to break it all down into microservices. That's kind of step 1, and the microservices is step 2. Using this approach, okay, so you've centralized your hardware into a single, or probably redundant, but blade service that rather than a whole bunch of purpose served computers. So there's some costs there. It's almost all IP. So that certainly the benefit to IP obviously is that there's so many things that use that the infrastructure equipment for that is mass produced and it's much less expensive than purpose-built SDI equipment, which has got a much smaller marketplace, so it's much more expensive and much more unique. It's easy to upgrade. It's a lot easier to do expansion and retract contraction in this environment than it was in the first one as well. The challenges still remain timing, particularly in the playout area, but they're the ones that we're closer to solving those, not just us. By we, I mean the industry, not we, FLORICAL. We are too, but I think everybody is. It's not unique. The other thing is that out here I've got ATSC encoder, but this is actually any number of distribution platforms. be it some sort of OTT, or whether you're feeding to the multi-channel providers, the cables and the dishes and that sort of stuff, or whether you're feeding into a VOD storage, and that may be cloud-based as well. So that expansion in the ways that we have to distribute, that we get to distribute, maybe not have to, but we're able to, also adds a complexity. It's the rights management at that point becomes also important. I was watching a football game that was being over like a CBS stream, CBS Now, and how much of it is just in the commercial breaks is just a graphic that says your program will return soon. And I noticed that this is the first I watched, and at that kind of delivery, I'd normally been linear through cable or whatever. And my grandsons were saying, "Why is it always the same commercials?" You know, even because it was like 4 commercials that were on every single time there was a commercial break. And I know it seems like that when you're watching the broadcast, but it's nowhere near as bad as it is watching the stream, because that's what they can sell on the stream, and that's what, you know, that's how they can. The only thing they can make a package deal. You know, buy 400 commercials for this football game, and you know you get this price. But that's it. So there's a lot of manipulation of what's in the signal chain after it kind of goes through the regular playout chain before it goes to the distribution. It has to be accounted for as well. Comments for the good of the order? Anything? Shaddy, anything to add?
No, not.
Okay. All right. So here's and then we get to this kind of this phase 3, the migration, is turning this into microservices that can exist in computing containers. So it's broken down even smaller components, but that's kind of the form in which it's most suited for use in the cloud. I should point out that when we say, and Shadi started to touch on this, when we say cloud, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, there's public cloud and there's private cloud, and there's some hybrid of that. And our sense of it is, and this may not be true, and then we may change our sense as time goes on, but the notion of private cloud may be of more interest to broadcasters than public. So that this whole computing infrastructure that could be called a cloud is actually on your premise, and you have control over it. It's much more secure than it would be it's more secure. I don't know whether much more, but it's more secure than it might be in the cloud. You have much more control over the in and out of it, the connections to it, and it's because it's there. Some of the changes, some of the things that you need to do at the spur of the moment or as things arise are much easier to do. And for a master control operator, this would just look no different than it does now. In fact, even if it was in a public cloud, it's a screen that's a user interface that you're interacting with, and whether it's hardware in your plant or whether it's software and devices in the cloud or in a on-premise cloud, it still looks the same to the master control operator. He can't go over there and, you know, wind back the tape or something, but it's still what he's interfacing to is still the same sort of touch and feel as to what it's really become. It's an interesting thing. This is kind of, one of the things we provide in our current offerings is, you know, it's a GUI that people interact with, but we also have available a hardware control panel that can push buttons to to trigger actions, and channels can be ganged. And so in a hub, if one operator is running 9 CBS stations in its NCAA's basketball tournament, all those stations may go to break at the same time. So he only has to push one button and he's switching all 9 of them to their break. And you find that the guys who have been operators for a long time, they use that hardware panel. It's a rock solid thing that you can run across a room and smash the button. And if you need to do something quick, and it'll hold up for years. And the younger guys, they do it all on the same capabilities exist on the screen, and they do it all on the GUI because that's just what they've done all their lives. It's a real interesting thing. Shaddy, what am I missing here? What have I not talked about?
I just want to add two points. I'll start with the first one, is the connectivity. A lot of people are going to ask, how much connectivity do I need to go to the cloud, right? This is, I'm all this videos going out. With the current compression rates, I think it's going to be very easy to kind of do that migration to the cloud. And then the changes that happen from a GUI's perspective is a delta change. So you're going to have very, very minimal traffic going back and forth to the cloud, and it's going to barely even touch your network. I think we've done some benchmarking before where it was under 1 megabyte in total to kind of go to the cloud and come back with the connection with a little bit of confidence monitoring as well. The other point I want to touch on is that when we say private and public cloud, within the public cloud, you can have levels of privacy. So you can have shared resources, or you can have dedicated resources, and obviously depending on your budget, you can choose the appropriate option for you. But if some security are, like, for example, government agencies have a special cloud infrastructure that they use that has more dedicated resources for them, so they're not sharing storage or processing power with other customers. So just a couple things to think about compared private versus public, where public does have a certain type of levels when it comes to that.
I think another thing and actually Shane and I were talking about this yesterday, that all in all, these kind of moves from one technology to another come down to being business decisions. They're ROI-based decisions that someone is going to look at, well, when am I going to recoup this investment if I make this move? And while I think in the long run, as it all becomes available, the running from the cloud, be it private or public, will probably be a less expensive way to go. It changes two things. It changes the model from a CapEx model to an OpEx model. And there's lots of people who think that's a good thing because you can predict what it's going to be, what it's going to cost you in an OpEx sort of a way, when there's others that don't, because if a capital expense happens once and then they're done with it until whenever they can find the money to do it again, and that's usually 5 or 6 years down the road. Where this is not an unnoticeable charge to do this as OpEx on a monthly or a yearly basis, however you're going to pay. So there's some people that lean very heavily toward wanting it to be OpEx because of the predictability of it. And there's some people that absolutely do not want to talk about doing that. They want to own equipment that they can refresh when they're ready to refresh it. So that's kind of another piece of the discussion.
I do want to mention from having worked with Amazon at the cloud, for example. I'm just going to take Amazon as an example. When you commit to a certain amount of time, like I'm going to commit to a year worth of cloud computing or anything of that sort, then the price can drop for as far as 70% off what you would have paid month to month. So I think what they're looking for is commitment, and looking at the history of it, the price of cloud has always gone down. It's been on down slope for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. So it's always something to think about, 2 or 3 years down the road, or even 5 years down the road, how the price is going to play out.
So Shaddy, what's your thought about, so if I'm a television station and I have, all afternoon, I'm showing network or syndicated program so that's network is just fed. The syndicated program is stored in the cloud and played out. And I go to live news. So what does that signal chain look like when I go to live news from my studio?
It should technically just be a switch, and they would just you switch. There's going to be a little bit of delay, obviously, for the video to go up, because you're going to hit an encoder, going up to the cloud, unless you're doing live news directly from your station that goes to the transmitter. So you're either gonna hit a cloud encoder, which is gonna have a little bit of delay, or you're gonna have the same type of delay going directly through your air chain down to your transmitter.
So you'd switch that air chain from the content that was coming from the cloud to coming out of your studio.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. That's really kind of our overview. Is there any other kind of questions or comments or whatever that anybody wants to make?
Ron, could you go a little bit into some of the individual products like the Accutas integrated playout and some?
Yeah, certainly. That's Acuitas.
Yep.
But there's no so Acuitas is our channel in a box, and it basically it resides in a 2RU HP computer server, and it has in there can hold two channels. Well, it can actually now, with the latest advances in the video card, can hold up to 4 channels in a box, and each channel has 2 live video inputs as well as the storage that's in the box to play server content. 6 layers of graphics, a 2D DVE, and the automation software resides in that box as well. So that's what's playing things out on time. And if by chance you have third-party equipment that you want to keep that you don't want to get rid of because of this channel in the box, like a graphics system that you really like or something like that, it also will control external equipment, including the router on the side feeding it. So the master control switcher, the content and graphics and DVE reside in the box, or some combination of those can be controlled outside the box. Up to 4 channels in 2RU. There's the other version of that is an ingest version of the Acuitas, and that's, I don't know, I think it's 3 or 4 ingest channels and 2 for monitoring, so you can do QC and timing and that sort of stuff. It will also take that's where you will store stuff that comes in file-based format. We have another product that can automate the ingest of the file-based content, so that can pretty much be hands-off and will show up in the server after it's been delivered by Pathfire or whoever it's been delivered by, and then it just needs to be QC'd, because all those things that are coming from edge servers, from digital delivery systems, they usually have all that metadata, the timing metadata and stuff is already with them. So that will just automatically populate the database as well.
Does your box do the QC?
Well, I mean, oh, you mean automated QC?
Yeah.
No, not at this point, no. That's there's some people that do that really well. and it's a complex process to do that. And so we would recommend that a couple of people who do that. I think Tektronix I think Tektronix has a product that does that, and there's another one that will just look at that and they'll tell you everything that's wrong with it, whether it's black, to exactly how long it is and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. No, we haven't integrated that yet. We would if we were to integrate it, we would probably try to partner with them and integrate their product into the computer, and I mean there's plenty of processing power in those servers, so it would be possible to do that. Have you done that? Have you been looking at those things, Marty? Those
Well, not specifically. I have worked with two other companies that are doing this sort of thing,
Uh-huh.
but they're mostly for the lower level cable industry,
Oh, okay.
where you're more broadcast OTT, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's very similar. Probably like Glenn down here. Hi, Glenn. That's Marty. I know you're working with Telview, and there's a lot of similarities here.
A lot. Yes, I can run the station from my home office.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and actually, that's one of the things that's become also a useful thing in this pandemic is people being able to do that, to run from a remote location. And when we started adding this functionality a few years ago, it was mainly so that the poor chief engineer, when he got a call in the middle of the night, didn't have to get up and come to the station. He could remote in and find out what was going on in the playlist, or whatever, and say, okay, do this, and we're all good. But it became much more of a common and useful feature as people had more and more trouble getting into facilities and being able to be in them. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, the other products that we have will do automated scheduled ingest of baseband stuff. So if you got satellite feeds that come on a regular basis, you can schedule those out for a year. If it's every Thursday at 2:00, you get, or something that's coming on a satellite, you can schedule that to be recorded, and it will be, or you can schedule something to be recorded in 2 minutes, and just almost a crash recording like that. But it's, and then we talked about the ability to automatically ingest the file-based stuff. We also have a product in the system that for centralized ingest, and this has been interesting to groups that have a lot of stations that run the same syndication, and they can ingest that content, that episode of Friends, whatever it happens to be, one place, time it, and send it out to all the places that need it with the accompanying metadata. And so can be a big savings of dollars for people who don't have to have people to time shows that are coming in every day. They're not doing the same work 20 times. They're doing it once and serving 20 people. And that's a product that doesn't need to be, it can be standalone. It doesn't have to be part of a FLORICAL automation system. It can work in conjunction with anybody's. We've done some demos of cloud-based playout, but once again, it's been stuff that's been already produced, and it's just really kind of controlled from somewhere else. But the schedule is there, and it's played out on schedule, and that's. But we haven't found broadcasters that are ready to do that yet, other than for maybe DR purposes, or for their secondary channels, their diginet channels that are pre-scheduled quite a ways anyway. I think it will happen, and I think it will probably happen faster than we think it's going to at this point, but there's still those gaps that we feel need to be filled in, and we've talked about them, some of the sections of 2110 and other things. And there's actually a microservices forum that we have membership on, that, and it's run by broadcasters. It's doing exactly that, trying to identify and solve these kind of issues, with the hope that as they move along, they're all the people that are on that committee are also longtime SMPTE members that have worked on standards committees in SMPTE, and so that's where that stuff will end up once they've reached a point where they feel like they've got something that is worthy of being standardized. They have kind of a direct link into SMPTE to do that. I mean, it's obviously where it's going to end up being standardized. It's not going to be any other body, maybe SCTE, but that's an interesting thing. There's a lot of SCTE standards that, or at least some that are more and more useful as we get into all this stuff, but particularly the OTT things that broadcasters never thought about before, and then suddenly go, hey, this is a good thing we can use. Yeah, 35 and 104 is a perfect example of that. I think we're in an evolutionary stage.
Yeah, you get into cable, an awful lot of local cut-in commercial content and stuff like that.
Well, it's an interesting thing because the first place we saw that, or that I saw it anyway, was cable companies wanted the broadcasters to cover their ads. So if Comcast is doing an ad that says great new deal if you sign up, they didn't want their customers to see it. so for the feed that was going to the Comcast system, they put a different commercial in than the one that was going out over the air. And that was the first time we saw that. And then so they would usually provide the devices. They were usually something like a Sapphire server that would just have a GPI trigger. But as we've gone along, they've become a lot more complex, and we've started to move into the SCTE 104.35 realm to do that, because it gives them a lot more flexibility in what they can cover it with. Anybody else? Any other comments or questions?
Other companies that you may be partnering with?
Excuse me. Yes, we have a very strong partnership with Harmonic. We've done some things with them. We actually do. We kind of carry one of their products, although we don't really attempt to sell it much because they're much better at selling it. And we'll just let them do it. If somebody's coming to us for a Harmonic server, they haven't talked to Harmonic, and that's just hard to believe because they have such a presence. But we also integrate. What's the name of the graphics company?
Chiron or
oh gosh, why am I blanking? There's one of the well-known graphics companies. We can incorporate their graphics system into the Acuitas.
New Blue. That's New Blue. That's another.
No, it begins with a V. I can't think of who it is.
V or B?
Well, I'll think of it like I'll call you up in the middle of the night and tell you what it is, because it'll come to me. I keep thinking Vertigo, but it's not them. It's
I hope not.
no. Yeah, well,
that's when the picture rolls.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now we have, and we have in the past integrated with people who it just makes sense to. Talking about the automated QC. If there's people that do that, it's silly to reinvent a wheel when we can integrate with what we do. So yeah, we're not opposed to that, and we will as we talk to folks. But because the history of controlling third-party devices as an automation company, the majority of those 35 years have been controlling other people's devices. So we have good relationships with folks, and we're always in conversations with people about what makes sense to integrate and what makes sense to just keep the way it is. One of the biggest changes particularly in the server business over the past 8 years or so is that the ability to do within the box transcoding. It used to be that you had a server and you had to have your files in exactly that server's format, or they weren't going to work. And now most of them will play out a variety of formats, so you can have multiple ones in there. Ours, the Acuitas, you can set the output for whatever you want it to be, 180, 720, 480, whatever, and it will, on the way out, transcode everything in that box to that format. So you can chain together multiple pieces of content that are of different formats, and it will all come out to what you want it to come out to be. And we're not the only one who does that. That's a fairly common situation now. So it's really, what it's done is it's forced companies like Telestream to really expand what they do and to work what they, their current Vantage product they see as a workflow product, not as a transcoder, which is true. It is what it does. But so a lot of that capability that used to be third-party devices now just resides in the servers themselves.
Does that?
I lost you there, Marty.
Oh, okay. I said, does that unrest of compression or?
I still, you're kind of cut out halfway through the question.
Yeah, I'm getting a warning.
Did anybody hear the whole question?
No,
I heard part of it.
fading out too.
He's freezing, so I think he's
Yes.
got a bad feed.
Oh, okay.
So write it and hold it up to the
I-
screen. What'd you say, Shady?
I think he asked about compression. I'm not sure if he's referring to as we can do multiple types of files. So basically different resolution, different types, like, AVC, in addition to some MPEG
Yes.
files and so on and so forth within the same playlist, which is yes.
Yes. Yeah, we can handle multiple compression formats as well. A lot of people will still standardize them anyway, but we can handle the multiple formats. Is that a Coors you're drinking, Jay? Oh, okay. All right.
We're still losing you, Marty. You're on the hairy edge of fading out and freezing. Sorry.
Okay, well, the same's happening with you. I'm getting,
Okay.
You may want to just dump out and come right back in again. It could be your server.
I could try it.
Or somebody's microwaving something.
No.
That's right. It's
My
dinner.
wife just said no.
You actually sound fine right now. I think it caught up. It was lagging for just a minute.
That better? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shadi answered my question.
That's a relief. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I have a
anything else?
question. I'm speaking more for the cable access community, which are unlimited budgets. And it was a little scary at the beginning of your presentation because I kept hearing that term CapEx, and that usually means big dollars, 7, 8, 9 figures. So I guess the question I want to ask is for a public access facility which has limited amounts to spend on this. Are there options in your world for low budget companies?
Not, to be perfectly honest, no. Because
Sorry.
I mean, there's plenty of people that do have products that are more priced in a different range. But I mean, I think realistically, because we're really targeting the broadcaster, the commercial broadcaster, that we'd probably be more than you would want.
I appreciate your candor. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, we've tried, and we just haven't been able to make it work on some fairly big cable type news organizations. It's just been out of reach.
Now, in some of that lower end equipment that is in the cable market, they are doing playout from cloud already.
Yeah.
Pretty.
Yeah, I actually doing some research for this. I was surprised at all these company names who I hadn't heard that are doing that. But again, I think it's stuff that's it's not really the dynamic. It's things that are set well in advance and ready to go, and they can be stored and just played out without having to have a lot of interaction with them while it's happening. And if I'm wrong with it, I appreciate being corrected. That was the impression that I got.
Well, actually, Glenn is using that. I don't know if Glenn has any comments on reliability or putting you on the spot, Glenn, but
The platform I'm using for the station in a box that we're using is not doing any kind of live to the frame switching. We're just talking just content pre-recorded. We're not currently using technology that we have that claims to be able to do frame accurate switching by remote control. I have not gotten that operating.
Yeah, I think it's only a matter of time, but I think we're just not, we don't see it as being there just yet, you know.
Ron, I have another question. Not too long ago here in the Boston area, there was a Tribune station that was operating both Channel 56 in Boston, but through an LMA was also running Channel 45 in Albany. And there's an apocryphal story of one night in Albany, there was a local fire emergency in the block near the TV station. And they had to evacuate some buildings because of hazardous fumes or fuel or whatever it was. And the local police in Albany were calling the number to reach the Albany TV station. And the master control operator in Boston was picking up and taking the call.
Yeah.
And he just was completely bamboozled, and he couldn't understand why they couldn't help him. He just wanted a public service announcement saying, stay away from this area, you know, a very simple little thing. But he didn't understand or grasp that it's totally out of their control. There is no master control in Albany. It's you know, a satellite operation. I don't know how that worked out. I'm sure that there were some plans made to make some changes at a later time, but the local police people were really up in arms about that.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing. One of our customers has a big hub in Indianapolis, and this particular broadcaster has stations all over the country, and they have this one station in particular is in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is about 70 or 80 miles northwest of Dallas, and that's a standalone station. All their equipment is self-contained. They just run out of there. But somebody cut guy lines on the tower, which was in their backyard. I mean, somebody actually cut the guy lines. And so they had to evacuate the facility because they didn't know if that tower was going to fall. And within about 3 hours, not less than that, within about 2 hours, in the Indianapolis hub, they had set up what they needed to run that station's master control until they got the tower situation fixed. So, but that's the same thing that would have happened. That must have been the first time and only time that happened, because I would think that the story you're telling, Paul, because I would think that if people are doing that hubbing on a regular basis, that they would have some procedures in place to deal with kind of emergencies like that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that in the places that we do, they have a way to insert those kind of things if they need to. But if there was nobody, if it's at night and there's nobody in the facility, they'd have to have somebody at the hub to do it, and then just put it into that.
I do believe this thing was well after hours. It was after the 10 o'clock news or whatever. And it was just one of those awkward situations where the master control operator is talking with a sergeant at some desk in Albany, and he wants some action taken. And this poor guy in Boston, there's not much I can do here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, and it wasn't even an EAS thing. It was more just put a crawl down there that says, or cut in.
I have a personal story from my college days as a television operator. Saturday morning, I got a call from somebody who identified himself as the sheriff of something, wanting to report a missing child or something like that. And I had no authority to what I was going to run around and try to make a sign to put in front of a camera. This is before the character generators. But I mean, I wasn't even, there was no provision, there was no policy for how I
Yeah.
would contact the general manager to get
Yeah.
permission to do such a thing. Anybody could make a phone call like that and call me.
Well, that's true. Then see what happens.
It,
Yeah.
it almost sounds like a reverse E911 type of application where VoIP phone systems oftentimes are centralized back at somebody's headquarters in another state. And
Yep.
so if you pick up a phone in the office that you're in and you try to call the police, you might be reaching the police in the other state as
Yeah.
opposed to reaching your local police. And that's why they have to have a local connection for a 911 call to be able to call locally through a local exchange to get the local police.
Hey, Greg, what's your relationship with the Plattsburgh station? That's just across the lake from you. Do you guys ever have to deal with things like this?
Well, the Plattsburgh station actually was combined into Burlington. So WPTZ is now actually in Burlington, Vermont, with only a satellite bureau in Plattsburgh. So they've kind of reversed roles. But yeah, one's in New York, one's in Vermont. I don't know exactly what their arrangements are for those types of things, but I'm sure they've got their challenges.
I would think that if there was some emergency in Plattsburgh, the local police officer might call a number and get somebody in Vermont and expect something to happen. Would he not, or she?
Yeah, the city of license question comes up. I don't know exactly how that's handled, but I'm on a conference call with them every Monday at 1:30 p.m. I could ask.
I'll reach out to a couple of people who were involved with the thing at 56, and I don't know how it resolved, but I'm sure that they had to do something for future situations. Ron, thank you for a great presentation.
Well, thank you all for allowing us to do it and sticking in here all this long. Appreciate that.
We'll post that as well as a video on demand.
Yeah, what will happen is that Paul Beck will send me the recording, and I think I already have a copy of your PowerPoint. I will post it, and I will send you an email so you can put the link in to whatever publicity you want to do.
Excellent, yeah.
And we leave those up permanently. You can count on being able to refer to this videotape on the New England section. And we have a Facebook page on which it will be announced too. And there are quite a few broadcasting people on it. And so you may find that a fair number of people will listen to this presentation, and maybe you'll get some customers out of it.
Excellent. I will probably, once you send me that link, we'll probably put it on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, and
Right,
and at the time when I do, I'll send you the link so you can see the other things on. And
Yeah.
so if you want to think a little bit about the sentence or two that describes it,
Yeah.
I'll put that in.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Very
I
good.
must say that the
I-
graphics came out really well with the screen share. They were razor sharp.
Look good.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Greg, I want to say.
I have a
hi,
quick
too.
question. Do you guys have a LinkedIn page that we can tag in our post if we post it on LinkedIn? Is that possible?
I will send you the link to the YouTube recording, or actually they'll go to our page, our SMPTE page.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
you can distribute that link to anyone you want,
Okay.
described in any way that you like.
Okay.
It's just a regular link.
Okay, excellent. That's very good. All right.
Thanks again, and keep an eye out for your email for what's going to happen in February and March.
All right.
As soon as we have more information, we'll get it out to you. So,
You know, this is the point where I'd usually say drive safely, but it looks like most everybody's
yeah,
already
we can
where they're
keep going
going.
around the block.
Okay.
We will wear our masks and be safe.
That's right, exactly.
Thanks a lot, Ron.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you all.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Shadi. Bye-bye.
Shadi.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
bye.
Take care.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night,